Good evening. Once again, we are here to discuss a very depressing event. I am not feeling really good. It doesn't matter when somebody passes after having lived more or less the exact life that they wanted to, going out on their own terms, every cliche that you want. You can throw them all out there, But hearing the news that Robert Duvall had passed at 95, his 95th birthday was not that long ago. It was within, a couple of weeks, the same birthday as Diane Keaton. Hearing the news that he had passed, it's just pretty, not jarring, but it's gutting. Because the reality is, I hate to say it, somebody find Clint Eastwood and make sure he's okay. Because Clint now, he's the last one left. And I have all the respect in the world for William Shatner, who is of that age. William Shatner is in his mid-90s. But as far as old school, golden era actors, directors, producers, or in the case of Duvall and Eastwood, the answer is D, all three, Clint is now the last one left. Because Gene Hackman has been gone a year, and now Robert Duvall is gone. And people who became stars, let's say early 60s, Clint Eastwood with the spaghetti westerns, and Robert Duvall as Boo Radley in To Kill a Mockingbird. I mean, that movie is more than 60 years old. Just about 60 years old, I believe. He played Boo Radley. Duvall, in terms of his acting, and his screen persona, he's closer to Gene Hackman than Clint. Robert Duvall he was not necessarily the kind of movie star whose name was going to open a film. He made a lot of movies that were successful because he starred in a lot of great movies. You could say the same about Gene Hackman, although I would make the argument that at the peak of their respective careers, Gene was closer to what you would call a conventional A-list. Gene was headlining movies where he was playing more or less leading man kind of roles and not in character pieces or independent films or independent style films, such as, for example, Robert Duvall's Oscar-winning turn in Tender Mercies in '83. But Duvall just had that quality. He had that authenticity. The man was not even capable of seeming less than authentic on screen, even in lousy movies, even in films that were beneath his talents, even in roles that were beneath what he was capable of. The guy always brought it. And he brought his A game even in projects where he didn't even have to do it. He didn't have to give a real performance. And, we could talk about Tom Hagen in the Godfather films, his famous, 3-film arc as the consigliere of Don Vito and, of course, Michael. You can get into, as I say, Boo Radley. We could talk about him winning the Oscar and all of the other times he was nominated and films he should have been nominated for. You can do that, but, and you could bring up Apocalypse Now, the kind of quick role as Kilgore. I love the smell of napalm in the morning. Just so many epic line readings, so many iconic roles. But when I think of Robert Duvall, the 3 films that come to mind, for me, the first one is The Natural. And, we lost 2 people from The Natural within, the last 6 months. Robert Redford, who was also, Redford made it into his upper 80s, and he also lived an extraordinary life. But Michael Madsen, who was not very old. And I'm as big a Robert Redford fan as there is. I am as big a fan of the movie The Natural as there is. I believe that is Robert Redford's single finest piece of film acting. It's that movie. More so than The Sting, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, 3 Days of the Condor. His turn as Roy Hobbs is the best work he's ever done. Robert Duvall, I feel like, unlocked a separate gear for Redford. Because Robert Duvall, I don't give a shit, he was fucking robbed of a supporting actor. Not nomination, he was robbed of the Best Supporting Actor Oscar for his turn as Max Mercy. I have seen The Natural, 20 times from start to finish, and I still can't tell you, is Max Mercy a good guy or a bad guy? I don't know. And it's because Duvall was fucking magic on screen. And that character is electric. And he had just won the Oscar for Tender Mercies, and it was the kind of role where he could have gotten by on the smile and the chuckle and the charm and playing off of not only Robert Redford, but also Glenn Close and, of course, Darren McGavin. But Duvall brings something. There is no other actor who has ever worked in the business who could have played Max Mercy as well. And maybe because he had won the Oscar, they didn't nominate him. He probably wasn't going to win that year. That was the year of The Killing Fields and a little bit of controversy of Pat Morita. Many people thought should have won for The Karate Kid. But his work in The Natural. If you are familiar with some of Robert Duvall's work, but you haven't seen The Natural, well, it's a baseball movie. I'm not a sports fan. You watch that movie and you see the way Duvall, just by being himself, he gets more out of Redford in their scenes. It's like Redford felt challenged. I don't think Duvall said anything. He felt challenged, and he found an extra gear. I'm telling you, it's right there in the movie. And the other thing with Duvall, the other two movies, and the reason why I grouped them is because it's the same year. Now, it is also possible when actors of certain status, like a Clint, like a Gene Hackman, like a Robert Duvall, you reach a certain perch in the industry and you are cast in a certain kind of role because of your name and the experience you bring, but also the gravitas that you're just going to show up and you're going to have it. So in 1998, Robert Duvall was in two big studio, high-profile productions, one of which was quite clearly supposed to be Oscar bait, and the other just a kind of popcorn-munching, speculative sci-fi actioner. In neither of those films does Robert Duvall simply pick up a paycheck. He buries himself into roles. One movie, the one that's the Oscar bait, you could see that he knew that the material was good, and he probably was thinking, if I play my cards right, I can get another golden statue here. The other one, though, was never going to be an Oscar contender, but he plays it like it's Shakespeare. He plays it for the authenticity because Robert Duvall knew no other way. He could not fake inauthenticity. He always came across like this is actually the guy that's going through the events of the story. So 1998, the two movies that he made, the sci-fi actioner, the kind of popcorn muncher, is Deep Impact. And many of you have seen that film, especially if you're Generation Xers or elder millennials. The film is now nearly 3 decades old. It came out summer 98, so we're going on 28 years. This is a film, if you're under 30, you may not have seen, even if you're familiar with Robert Duvall. Now, he's not necessarily the first thing that you think of when you think of that movie, if you've seen it. You think of, hey, Morgan Freeman played the president. That was pretty cool casting. Téa Leoni is nominally the lead, and, Elijah Wood, and there's a lot of really cool stuff. The dearly departed from the movie business, Lele Sobieski has a good role. It's a really cool ensemble story. But Robert Duvall, as the leader of a gang of astronauts, cosmonauts, if you will, in the world of this film, who go up to try to figure out how to deflect a meteor that is going to destroy the planet. A planet killer. The story is so absurd, and there's Robert Duvall. Every time he opens his mouth, he's grounding the film. He's making the film feel like, well, maybe this could be. Maybe this is not so far-fetched. And the character that he plays, Spurgeon Tanner, and the whole movie, everybody keeps calling him Fish. His nickname is Fish. And I remember I saw the movie in theaters. And, we're watching the film, and it's early in the film, and he's identified as Fish, and the Ron Eldred character, they have a little bit of static there, but then they get over it. And somebody behind me goes, I don't understand. Are they going to tell us why they call him Fish? And I couldn't help myself. I said, the guy's first name is Spurgeon, right? Yeah. Well, Spurgeon, Sturgeon, right? It's got to be that. The guy said, oh, yeah. He pointed at me like, hey, good job, kid. I was 24 at the time. Anyway, you go the whole movie. They don't explain his name. They don't explain his name. Finally get to the end of the film, and the Ron Eldard character has been injured, and they're up there, and it looks like not only are they going to die, but the planet's going to die. But Robert Duvall is keeping Ron Eldard company, and Ron Eldard goes, "Fish. Why do they call you Fish?" And Duvall, with that little cackle that he was so famous for, he goes, "My name is Spurgeon. First day at the academy, somebody pointed out, it sounds like sturgeon. Fish." It was just that simple. That was nail meat head. Everybody was at level 6 or level 7. Me, the guy who's normally at level 7, no. They call him Fish because his name is Spurgeon. It sounds like sturgeon. It's probably just that simple, and it was. Duvall is great in that film. And he's the one who kind of comes up with a mild spoiler, a little bit of a solution that has gone by the boards. Because if you think about it, you're trying to save the planet, but you're also trying to save yourselves. No shit. What if you could possibly save the planet, but you got about a 100% chance of dying? Then what are you going to do? And as one of the other characters points out, look on the bright side. At least we'll have some high schools named after us. That's great stuff. And the other film, which came out later in the year, the Oscar bait movie, is a film I absolutely adore, A Civil Action, which it's Erin Brockovich before Erin Brockovich. It's the same story, not literally, but it's a very similar kind of story of, and I love this, corporate malfeasance. I don't actually love that. I love that phrase. It's a movie about corporate malfeasance. It's a movie about we're a multi-billion-dollar corporation. We're going to toxic waste dump wherever we want. We're going to put this stuff anywhere and go fuck yourself. Tough shit if you all die from cancer. We don't care because the shareholders are happy. This is literally the movie. So in that film, it's John Travolta's movie. And I guarantee you when Travolta took the role of a real-life attorney, Jan Schlichtman, he was kind of I hate to say ambulance chaser, but he's sort of presented as an ambulance chasing kind of an attorney. But the real guy, he kind of got religion, figuratively. He started chasing down leads and the notion that these big companies, in this case, Beatrice Corporation, which was, a practically $1 trillion corporation, they were cutting corners and they were dumping stuff in areas that they weren't allowed to, and they didn't care. And the more that Travolta's Jan Schlichtman looks into it, the worse it is. And people are getting sick. People are dying, like in Erin Brockovich. Again, it's not the same story, but the stories are similar, the true life stories. So Travolta clearly thought if he played his cards right, he was going to have a Best Actor nomination on a silver platter. And the irony is Travolta is phenomenal in this movie. The film just didn't connect with critics, and I don't understand why. It had the pedigree. It was, I think, was it Edward Zwick who directed it? I think it was Edward Zwick, but I could be wrong about that. I know that Steven Zaillian wrote the screenplay. Maybe Steven Zaillian wrote the screenplay and directed the film. I'm not sure about that. Zaillian did Searching for Bobby Fischer, and he also did, he wrote the screenplay for Schindler's List. The film just didn't do that well with critics. It's barely fresh on Rotten Tomatoes, but it is phenomenal. And Robert Duvall, not surprisingly, steals every scene he's in, and he brings out the best in John Travolta, as he did with Robert Redford in The Natural, and Darren McGavin in The Natural, and Glenn Close in The Natural, and all of the other characters. Joe Don Baker, the late, great Joe Don Baker. Damn, I forgot that he was gone too. He brings out the best and brought out the best in whoever he was sharing the screen with. But in A Civil Action, he plays a kind of country bumpkin who isn't, but as sort of a homespun, old-fashioned, attorney who Travolta thinks he's just going to run off his feet. And it turns out this guy that he plays, Jerome, I think his name is Jerome Thatcher. He just humiliates Travolta's character because you have expectations. Southern attorney, slow-witted, he's past his prime, and he just completely embarrasses John Travolta's Jan Schlichtman. It's just a series of great scenes. And Duvall, he got a Best Supporting Actor nomination. And he probably should have won. He did not win, even though every scene he's in is elevated by his presence. And I think the film is a home run. I give it a 9 out of 10. And I even talked about it roughly a year ago as part of my great movie series. And I mentioned just how galvanizing Robert Duvall is in support, and also how great John Travolta is, it's too bad that they didn't see fit to give him a Best Actor nomination. But I think it's because the critics just didn't. It made a lot of 10 best lists, but there were a lot of the major critics, Ebert and guys like that. They just didn't think that it was okay. They just didn't think that it was that great. Anyway, I didn't want to go on even as long as this. I apologize. But Duvall was special. He was one of the acting goats. Very few people would question that, whether it was in leads, whether it was in support. And you never felt him being colorful just for the sake of being colorful. It always felt real. It always felt lived in. He always felt like the person he was inhabiting, not just an actor who memorized lines. It was something in the cadence, the timbre of his speech, the line readings. Duvall was a legend. And I'm sorry that he's gone. I hope that he passed peacefully and it wasn't protracted. And it's a sad day. And let's just hope for continued good health for Clint, who will be 96 in May. Have a good night.